Turns out they owed me more than $1 million. But the morning the sheriff pulled into my driveway and told me I was trespassing on my own land, I realized something was very wrong in Mallerie Ridge. Because when someone is that confident about a lie, it usually means they're hiding something bigger. And what I uncovered didn't just embarrass the HOA, it destroyed them. If you enjoy stories where the underdog wins with patience, proof, and a little grit, stick with me. This one moves fast and ends in a way nobody in that neighborhood expected. The sound of tires crunching over gravel made me look up from fixing the hinge on my cattle gate. A sheriff's cruiser rolled to a stop near my porch. Sheriff Wade Collins stepped out slowly, scanning the property like he expected trouble. Behind him stood Heather Mallerie, president of the Mallerie Ridge HOA, a self-appointed queen of neighborhood order. She held a stack of papers against her chest and wore the kind of smile people save for moments they think they've already won. Cole, Wade said carefully. We got a report saying you're trespassing on community property. I blinked at him. Trespassing on my own driveway, I pointed at the dirt under my boots. Wade, I've lived here 21 years. Heather stepped forward before he could respond. Your structures violate multiple HOA regulations, she said coldly. That solar array is not approved. And that cattle gate doesn't meet our materials standard. I let out a slow breath. Heather, I said calmly, I am not part of your HOA. This ranch existed long before your subdivision. Her smile tightened. Everyone inside Mallerie Ridge boundaries follows HOA rules. No exceptions. Sheriff Collins shifted awkwardly. He knew my father had owned this land long before the subdivision existed. A procedure is procedure. Cole, he said quietly, if you've got paperwork showing you're outside their HOA. Now's the time. Oh, I have paperwork, I replied. And if someone bothered checking the county records instead of waving HOA rulebooks around, we wouldn't be standing here. Heather's smirk sharpened. Our maps clearly show your driveway intersects community access lanes. My maps say otherwise, the sheriff sighed. I'll file the report, he said. But bring your deed to the station later, I nodded. Fair enough, then I looked at Heather. Now get off my property. She didn't move immediately. Instead, she raised one of the violation papers. These fines stand until resolved, I laughed. For land you don't own. Her eyes went cold. We'll let the law decide. She turned and walked away, heels clicking across my gravel like she owned every rock. But the moment the dust settled behind their vehicles, a thought started digging into my mind. Heather hadn't acted like someone guessing, she acted like someone certain. And certainty like that usually comes from paperwork. Paperwork I'd never seen, but I was about to. The next morning, a thick envelope waited in my mailbox. 3 HOA violations. Then 5 more that afternoon. Unauthorized structure, noise from machinery, improper driveway use. Even my nephew's truck parked there last weekend somehow violated HOA policy. By sunset, the HOA had emailed the entire neighborhood claiming I was destabilizing community standards. I hadn't changed a single thing on this ranch in 20 years. But suddenly, I was public enemy number 1. That's when my neighbor Miguel Ortega walked over. She's coming after you hard, he said quietly. Same thing she did to the Turners and the Bowdens. What happened to them? They left, he said. Sold their homes just to escape the harassment. That's when I knew this wasn't just about rules. It was about control, and Heather believed she had it. But later that night, sitting at my kitchen table surrounded by violation notices, I noticed something strange. Every single complaint referenced a boundary line that didn't match my deed. Which meant one thing. The HOA wasn't just harassing me, they were working from a completely different map. And if that map existed, I was going to find it. The next morning, I drove straight to the county records office. Linda Barrett was behind the counter. 30 years handling land disputes had made her impossible to surprise. But when I explained the situation, she frowned. That doesn't sound right, she muttered. She typed my parcel number. Then her eyebrows lifted. Well, that's interesting. What is? She turned the monitor toward me. Several parcels inside the subdivision were highlighted. Trail entrance. Mailbox cluster, playground land, drainage basin. All inside the HOA neighborhood. And every single one still belonged to my family. I stared at the screen. That's impossible, no, Linda said slowly. What's impossible is that the HOA never noticed. Then she pulled up the document the HOA had been using. A developer planning map, never recorded, never approved, legally worthless. But on that map, my land had been colored like HOA property. Heather hadn't been lying on purpose, she'd been believing a mistake for 22 years. A mistake big enough to bankrupt an HOA. Linda leaned closer. Cole, they've been using your land without permission for 2 decades. My stomach tightened. How bad is that? She tapped a calculator. Back rent, penalties, infrastructure removal. She paused. You're looking at well over $1 million. Suddenly Heather's confidence made perfect sense. She thought she owned the land. She had no idea she'd been standing on borrowed ground. And now I had proof, but proof alone wasn't enough. I needed something undeniable. So I called the best surveyor in the county. 2 days later, bright orange boundary flags appeared all across the subdivision. The trail, the playground, the mailbox cluster, all marked with certified coordinates. And when residents started noticing, Heather came storming out of her house. What do you think you're doing? She demanded. Tommy, the surveyor, barely looked up. Marking land owned by Cole Maddox. That's community property. He hammered another stake into the ground. Not according to the county. Neighbors started gathering. Confusion spread quickly. Wait, he owns the trail. I thought the developer donated that. Heather's voice rose. Everyone go inside, but the damage was already done. Because nothing destroys false authority faster than visible truth. And bright orange boundary flags are hard to ignore. From there, things escalated fast. Security cameras caught Heather trespassing at night. Dumping yard waste onto my land, driving through my pasture. Even spray painting over survey markers. I handed every video to my lawyer, Grace Holloway. She reviewed the documents and said one sentence that changed everything. Cole, this HOA isn't just wrong, they're committing fraud. 22 years of unauthorized land use. Expired easements. Illegal enforcement of rules outside their jurisdiction. And when the math finished calculating, the number was staggering. Over $1.2 million in potential liability. So instead of hiding the truth, I invited the entire neighborhood to a barbecue. Right there on the land the HOA thought they controlled, 50 residents showed up. Even the sheriff came. Heather marched in furious, demanding the gathering end. That's when I stepped forward with the documents, and Grace explained the truth. The land, the expired easement, the legal violations. Then we played the video of Heather trespassing and destroying survey markers. The entire crowd watched in silence, because once truth becomes public, control disappears instantly. Within 48 hours, the county opened an investigation. Heather resigned, half the HOA board quit, and the entire system she'd built collapsed like a house of cards. In the end, the HOA came back to negotiate. We signed a fair lease for the land they'd been using, $2,000 a month. Maintenance on their side, clear boundaries, no more fake authority. And the money. I used it to start a trade scholarship for local kids. Because if something good was going to come from that mess, it might as well help the next generation. Now when I stand by my fence at sunset, everything looks the same. The cattle gate, the solar panels, the open Montana land my father once walked. But one thing changed. Nobody questions who owns it anymore. Because sometimes justice isn't loud, sometimes it's just the quiet moment when the truth finally stands its ground.